morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folari. Indeed, welcome back from the Independence holiday. So, everybody should be back to work, but depends on where you are. The expressway that goes, almost almost in front of TVC, not quite in front, it actually is by the side on the expressway in southwest of Lagos where we're broadcasting from. It's not the usual, traffic that you have on it, so I don't know what's going on there. But welcome back. And my guest, Colonel Hassan Stan Labo, he actually was nodding at that bit. It must have been what you experienced too, sir. Oh, I don't know if this is one of those things where if a public holiday falls on a work day, then you add it back. This special credit and debit system that we sort of operate. But,
nice being with you.
Indeed. My pleasure too. Happy Independence and all of that.
Same to you.
The independence is independence. There's going to be so many people talking about it. But something that happened before independence is what I thought we might be talking about. And that's the army, about 2 days or so to independence, the news item came out that, a center, the appropriate center in the army, was the venue of a seminar on spiritual warfare. And the Chief of Army Staff had actually advocated that, Nigerians should understand that we need spiritual warfare too. That in addition to whatever the professional prowess is that they could bring to the matter, he was alerting that Nigerians needed religions. The religions needed to all come together, and I believe the word he chose was interface with this spiritual warfare. Okay, you can imagine people went to town with that. Was it for real? You can imagine comedians will have a lot of fodder for their stand-up acts and all of that. But let's look at it, and especially as the general wasn't saying army, all soldiers would become chaplains, would become imams, but that we needed spiritual warfare too. Of course, I don't know if it's right, but the terminology is sort of borrowed from one of the main religions, even though it might exist in all religions. But that particular terminology, we know that, hey, you're fighting forces of evil and all of that, forces of oppression, forces of possession. In short, when people say spiritual warfare, then you're dealing with the dark side of town. And so the army coming in on this, maybe people looked at it from the point of view that, hang on, the army has all systems. It has satellites, it has ordnances, it has planes, it has this. I mean, it's a fighting force. And so maybe people are not so used to hearing professional fighters talking this light. You were in the army. First of all, let me ask how that particular news item grabbed you when you heard it, that we can't defeat Boko Haram without the essential component of spiritual warfare. How did you grab that statement?
I must be frank with you, Uncle Yori. I didn't see anything too wrong with that statement, frankly speaking, because maybe I'm speaking from my own angle as a Christian.
Yes.
Every day, some of us as Christians, when you wake up, you go by your side altar in your bedroom. If you're a Christian, you should have a side altar where you tell God, take charge of my day. See me through today, and so on. Does that mean that I've given up everything and resort to just prayer and fasting? No. All the Chief of Army Staff is saying is that we should also invite our God into this as a nation.
Okay.
We are a praying nation. We are not like other nations, especially the West, who don't give a damn. So we should not start bringing in this Western culture into our things. Nigerians are known to be very religious. Are we running away from that now?
No, I don't
Good.
think so. But
so what is wrong in a Chief of Army Staff, who probably is a Christian or a Muslim, says, well, we are doing the best we can, but please, those of you out there, try to bring in our God into this. Can we look at the spiritual angle in support of this? Okay, it's like feeling that, oh, can we get our God's attention to turn in our direction and say, okay, Nigeria, I pull you out of this mess. As a Christian, I believe in that, and I think it was from that angle that he was coming. But unfortunately, like it is with everything with us in this country, oh, those who want to run down the government will give it all sorts of interpretation. With all the money we voted into the army, now they can no longer fight. They've resorted to prayer and fasting. and land they are going to the mountains, and so on. I've read all sorts of things. To me, they just make me laugh. I look at it from the comedian aspect. And, you know,
maybe one gets the sense that people have somehow, maybe unconsciously, separated the macho from the spiritual, because soldiers are seen as macho. You look at their boot camp, you look at the training. That's heavy going stuff. The weak will not survive in the army. Yeah. So you know they're thought to be macho, and so maybe the surprise for some. First of all, it needs to be said that the army. All religions are represented in the army.
I was about saying that too.
They have chaplains.
Yes.
They have what would it be? Imams. They have imams in the army. Yeah. So all that you said, perhaps I would have ordinarily most people would have said, we take that for granted. It's an army under God. The Nigerian army is an army under God. So we take that for granted. I imagine you see often that people are going off on a special mission. They will pray, but when the top level of the army says spiritual warfare component, we're not going to achieve our aim effectively, was what he said, without that essential spiritual war component. When you look at this against the backdrop, that's why Nigerians, I just know how highly critical we can be, you know, when we're in the mood. You know, we've been hearing that Boko Haram is on its last foot. It's the dying throes. In short, they've been decimated. All of that to one side, which was encouraging to a lot of people, even as some people were saying, maybe don't tell us too much about the security implications. Now to hear this from the chief honcho in charge of that particular theater, against the backdrop of we've finished them, we've defeated them, we've decimated them, to now hear that, hey, this job is not an easy one and it's not going to actually be successful without that essential component. Is maybe what grabbed people. Well, you think people? You just said that people were just being unfair. Might the PR, the PR department of the army, whatever it is, or I really mean whoever's function it is to advise the chief of army staff on PR, might he have done the job differently so that it doesn't come out in the way it is coming out? Because the Nigerian army has always been under God in terms of religions. It's not new. But coming from the fighting man number one is what probably made it a conversation topic.
Yes, and I want to say, as far as I am concerned, I think I support the Chief of Army Staff 100% in all he has done. His PR man would have gone to air now and do some of the clarifications which I am trying to do here, and so on. But if you are a born-again Christian, not just a Christian, that you answer Jesus as name does not make you a Christian, if you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
If you are a born-again Christian, you place your God first and foremost in everything you do. And if that is what the Chief of Army Staff is resorting to say, look, we've got to call in God into this. Fine. He has made some of us to even bring it again on a very strong term into our prayer points. There is nothing wrong with it. And a lot of true Christians out there will say there is nothing wrong with it. But when you are not a born-again Christian, or you are not even a Christian, you might not understand the context within which he made such statements. I think it's all right. All we should be saying now is, fine, God is going to back us up because we have appealed to him to do so. What are we now doing on ground to help this situation? Because God will definitely not back you when you fold your arms and go to sleep. If a boy has an exam, and instead of reading for the exam, he spends all his days on a night vigil when others are reading, and he goes to fail that exam, he cannot turn and blame his God. But when he's praying, and he's also making good use of his time by reading and preparing, fine. So we are praying. We should also be preparing or putting in enough physical effort on ground. What are we now doing on ground to see that we address such things? That is it.
So you'd give short shrift to whoever was suggesting that this could be demoralizing to some men under arms, you know, to hear that, look, our intense training and all of this, I'm a man of God too. It's like that's nothing.
In the course of our training as soldiers in this country, the spiritual angle is never left out. And that's why we have the Islamic, let me say, department for the understanding of the audience, and the Christian departments, all within the military. Okay, and they nurse our spiritual angle on us. And we, on Fridays, in the course of your training, the Muslims, adhere to their, go to, take care of their spiritual angles on Sundays and so on. When we were in military school, Zaria, in those days, we marched to the church. After prayers, we marched back to school, and so on. It was always very interesting. So as you were growing up as a soldier, you were realizing on your own that, look, the military is not pushing aside the spiritual angle. We pray before going to wars or before going out on anything. Most battalions, before they fly out to Liberia, to Sierra Leone, to Darfur, and so on, hold what we call unit prayers. The Muslims, the Christians, and so on. For God to please spare our life, take us and bring us back.
Okay.
It's all the same thing that we're doing.
Because even if you look in the Bible, you find, kings praying.
David and so on. These were all great men and great soldiers.
Okay,
yes.
okay. There's someone on the line in Abulegba. I beg your pardon, I mixed up the environments. It is actually a word of me, and it is Rotimi. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Monsieur Fiori.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning to your guest.
Fiori. In spite of the Agbada, it's Fiori.
You appear more like sheep this morning, sir. And good morning to your guest in the house, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the Chief of Army Staff is passing a message already. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
He's passing a message to Nigerian that he is tired of the job. He doesn't know what to do anymore. The president should have, as a matter of urgency, remove all these chief securities because they all lack ideas. They don't even know what to do anymore. That's why the chief of army staff will come out and is he not a pastor or a chief imam? If he want to be an imam, let him go to mosque and start praying.
But Rotimi,
yes, sir.
How about the point that if you look at the caption, even though it's the chief of army staff. The army advocates spiritual warfare in addition to whatever you think of as a fighting force. They advocate spiritual warfare too. Does that make it different for you once one puts that emphasis like that?
Chief Lord, please note this, that both Christian and Muslim in the Nigerian army have prayer departments. If we understand this, the chief of army need not tell Nigerians that we need prayer to overcome Boko Haram or insurgency. That's what I want you to understand. The problem is that this military general, they are all tired. The president should retire them. Let us bring new young men that have ideas. People are grieved of ideas. They don't know what to do again. They don't know how to control the security again. There are several allegations against the army in kidnapping, even the police.
Okay.
Thank you. The mayor of these days. Where is he?
Okay, Rotimi.
What's happening?
Rotimi, let's make room for other callers. But thank you very much. We have indeed noted your comment on the whole issue. Perhaps that's one of the examples that I cited, that because of the way the army is conceived around the world, you don't expect them to make religious headlines without prejudice to the fact that, you just said it, they are all an army. All armies are under God. They all pray. They hold special services. So the point I made also, Rotimi made a part of it, that we take all of that for granted. But now he has the rhetorical question: is he now an imam, or is he now a prophet? Is he now a pastor? Go on. He now finishes up with. He thinks people are tired and have run out of ideas.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see as this conversation proceeds, how other people see it as well. Because I dare say, like you, sir, you don't see anything wrong in this at all, unless somebody wants to engage in mischief. There are those who also are looking at it from the other point of view. I just don't know how to go about it, because I would have taken all for granted that they pray. In fact, I don't know if it's if it can be a minus against you when you're applying to the army and they say religion, you say animist. I don't know if they will allow. So you got to be one or the other. I don't know. So we take it for granted that these are men of faith. But so when the Chief of Army Staff, no less, of course, somebody speaking for him, now underlines it. And well, we were quick to say ourselves that in the Bible, David was always praying to the Lord, you know, he was a king. And in those days, I think kings, you know, led
And he fought several wars.
Yes, they fought several wars. So maybe that's where it's coming from. But you have to admit this is a bit of a unique situation. You know, we've seen soldiers up and down all over the universe. We've seen them at special religious ceremonies, you know. But to see them grabbing religious headlines, if there was a religious publication, I'm sure they would be making the cover. The Nigerian Army would be making the cover. But before you comment, sir, let me bring in Joshua from Irewole. Good morning, Joshua.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for calling in.
I greet your guest.
Thank you so much.
Colonel Stanley.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I think everything is wrong with that statement coming from the Chief of Army Staff. Everything is wrong with that statement. Whether it's adding spiritual warfare or whatever. We know the military, of course, they have Christians, they have Muslims, and I'm sure they should accommodate other people too who don't profess such faith.
Okay.
Yeah, so the idea of spiritual warfare, what is the meaning of spiritual warfare? I mean, are you going to put a spirit inside gun, or is it turning bullets to spirit? What is it telling us about spiritual warfare?
Forgive me, Joshua, for interjecting. Even if you're not a Christian, I don't know. It doesn't matter. You know what spiritual warfare is. You know, you know the.
Uncle Yori, I don't argue beliefs. I don't argue with people on the basis of their beliefs, because individuals of us are entitled to our beliefs. That is why Nigeria does not have a religion. Nigeria, as of now, is a constitutional democracy, or a government, a sovereign government run by a government, not by Bible or by Quran.
Okay.
We have elevated the religion to a point where it is making all of us become dumb.
Let me stay with you for a moment, Joshua, if I may. As you must have read this story, the real meat of it is that the Chief of Army Staff, in his address, was pointing out that Boko Haram is the easiest thing to defeat. However, their ideology is not as easy to defeat. And you can take out all the Boko Haram men you want, but it will always be replenished by the continuation of the ideology. And so he was actually advocating that religious leaders, both Muslims and Christians, should find a way to talk to that, speak to that, de-radicalize them. That was the context when we go into the details of the statement.
So, sorry, sir. So are they saying that these people are no longer in Sambisa forest? Do they have an imam that is in charge of them at Sambisa forest that is hearing the Chief of Army Staff? We can de-radicalize our people, just like the proscription of the new group that was trying to spring up, which could become another Boko Haram. We can talk to ourselves to de-radicalize such people.
Okay.
But the Boko Haram, the fighting force of Boko Haram in Sambisa forest, you can't defeat them with warfare.
No, warfare two. Spiritual warfare two.
In addition.
In addition.
They should remove that two away. Instead of two, let them put tool. Let them retool themselves.
Okay.
So that is why if the Chief of Army Staff is tired, he should give way to a fresh mind. These Boko Haram people, you cannot defeat them by praying. Praying what?
Okay.
They hear prayer. Somebody who is ready to kill you say you are praying. They should better go and get more tanks and better guns and face this matter and be talking of defeating Boko Haram by warfare. Please, sir, they should be serious. Thank you.
All right, Joshua, but no doubt the Chief of Army Staff was proceeding from the almightiness of God, and that there is nothing that God cannot do. And so while they are doing their own little bit with their training and exercises and all of that, do not forget the spiritual aspect, but that is not going down well with some people. With a lot of people. With a lot of people, in fact. They can't seem to put the two statements together. Reconcile the two positions, But it's interesting because with Joshua there, when I went into the actual background to the whole matter about advocating spiritual warfare too, the general was explaining that you can defeat Boko Haram if it's in terms of how many you capture, how many you kill, whatever. You can do that. But if you've not killed that ideology, it goes back to even to the idea of wars start with quote-unquote warped ideologies, depending on what side you are on. They will not call it warped, but most people in society will say terrorism is warped as a tool to reach your ideological preference. So there's that aspect that the Chief of Army Staff might well have been pointing to, that you got to understand that having 10,000 Boko Haram men behind bars, if that is what one of the objectives, you might say, yeah, we've done very well, but we haven't done much if there are still pockets that can come and replenish that whole ideology.
Because of their belief in
Because of their belief in it. And that's why they're saying religions should take the forefront in this spiritual battle, I think was the word, the expression that was used.
So that religious leaders could go forth and begin to
Thank you very
talk
much.
with their...
Very much, Colonel. Good morning, Mr. George.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you for calling in.
And good morning to the Colonel.
Sure. Good morning, please.
Uncle Yori, I do not intend to be the spokesman for the Army. But what I think the Chief of Army Staff was referring to is indoctrination. They have an ideology. For example, their members are made to believe that if they kill one person, when they die, they will be given 7 virgins in heaven to welcome them in heaven. And that killing people is good before the eyes of the Almighty. They go about recruiting people that they capture. Most of the people they abduct, they turn them to their members. They pay them all sorts of money and all that. And this is the aspect I believe the Chief of Army Staff may have been referring to. You know that there was a time the Army first muted this idea, asking the Bonu elder and the emir to, and those clerics to talk to their people against the preachings of Boko Haram. Then Boko Haram people turned around to be killing the clerics and the emirs that dared to do such things to their people. And you can see that the war is actually growing based on that ideology. They're not splitting up. This kind of war is not easily won. But I want to believe that in that perspective, the Chief of Army Staff was speaking. Up till now, that idea was not, followed up. I've seen the northern government that took it seriously with the emir, that this ideology must be a priority in the teachings of Islam in my state. Okay. I don't think you have made any such observation. They have not done that. We need to do that. If you address a problem from the top without addressing it from the root, you are only fanning it to grow further. Okay. That's what I think the Chief of Army Staff is saying. But be that as it may, he should fight on without anything in that regard. As a soldier, he is there to win a war. Because people are now interpreting it as if it is saying pray. It's not based on prayer, but it's based on ideology, capturing or defeating that ideology. If it is prayer, who are they praying to? The enemies are also praying to the same person. Okay. So do they expect the God of justice to grant the prayer of one who wants to kill the other, and
knock down the other one's own. It's a war, and war is a product of men's wrongdoing.
Okay.
Let them war and let them kill themselves. Whoever is able to kill the other should kill the other. That's how it is.
Thank
Good
you.
morning.
Thank you very much for calling in, Mr. George. You know, well, okay, as you know, George was putting in it there. There's a sense in which you can see as the Chief of Army Staff maybe calling attention to a little discussed aspect of the whole thing. That look, the Army, yeah, it's out there on the field doing its work that it is highly trained for, but you know, guys, we're fighting against an ideology. Now, I don't know that that isn't always the case when the Army moves into action anywhere. It's some sort of an ideology that they're probably fighting against, you know. Even if it's a matter of fighting for the territorial integrity of Nigeria. Somebody has brought an ideology that he can mess with any aspect of our territorial integrity and our people will be up there, you know.
And that is why, Yorin, we should revisit our de-radicalization process. How is it being carried out? I'm talking about de-radicalization here because territories that we are recovering, for instance, and then some of the PWs, prisoners of war, we are taking on, which of course, like you know, they are behind the bars and so on. They have to go through some profiling process, get de-radicalized and so on. We must revisit our de-radicalization process again. See how we carry it out. How thorough is it? So that you don't send these people back to society, into territories which you have recovered, only for them to start all over again what you think you are done with. It is important because, like you rightly said, we are talking about an ideology here. It's not just about defeating them. If you defeat and leave only 5 people who still believe in that ideology, it's only a matter of time.
They can propagate it.
It's only a matter of time.
Okay.
They will raise their heads again.
One second, please. Mazi Okoroafo, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Sayori. Good morning, Colonel Hassan. Good morning, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Honestly, sir, you see, the Army request for invocation of the oracle of the Holy Spirit is a welcome development. But the request is coming very late. Although God is always ready to accept us anytime as prodigal son in the Bible. Like what Reverend Father Boniface in Com said, he said, prayer is always very, very important in any situation. Now, to me, I would just, based on what the Army is requesting for prayers, I recommend that all Nigerians, whether we're Christian, at least we say 3 Our Father, 3 Hail Mary, and 3 Glory to God for the God intervention under this situation. But what we should bear in mind is this, that the Boko Haram we are fighting, they are also praying. Because there's no armed robber you will catch or any kidnapper you will catch today. He will tell that he prays before he goes for operation. Which means the Boko Haram or the insurgents, anything we call them, they also pray. So it depends on the efficacy of your own prayer. Who is praying? And what is the situation that you cannot be under sin and be praying and you want God to get.
And who is he praying to? It's also important. Mazi, who is he praying to? Is also important.
So, thank you very much. Because who is praying as an individual or a group of people? Because it cannot be under sin. You say you are praying to God. It cannot work.
Yeah.
So what the Army should do is that the Army should strategize. First, they should look for, seek the face of God, strategize their system of fighting. That's because prayer without work cannot work.
Okay.
I repeat, prayer without work cannot work.
Okay.
The Army should do what? Sit up, strategize, and pray. Thank you very much. Our Father, Hail Mary, and glory to God. Have a blessed day in Lagos.
Thank you very much, Mazi Okorafo. Well, at this stage, I think we're in the conversation on what exactly is the meaning of, include spiritual warfare in the arsenal against Boko Haram and the other one, I forget the name of that new one that people are talking about. Iswa. Include spiritual warfare in the arsenal. The Chief of Army Staff is reminding Nigerians. We'll be right back. We'll continue this conversation and, of course, taking your calls as well. Okay, welcome back. So we're looking at, we're actually an aspect of the war against insurgency, and, you know, we want progress reports, and we'd like to hear positive progress reports that things are looking up. We're winning this war, which we have been having positive suggestions from, you know, those who are responsible. The president has said in one context, the Minister of Information has also said that, you know, we're actually doing well in the war. They're on the back foot and all of that. And boom, the Chief of Army Staff, who is actually on ground, you know, his forces, his fighters are on ground. Well, he's now speaking to them, and many people are surprised by the Nigerian Army organizing a seminar on spiritual warfare. And indeed, somebody has said on the program this morning that his unkind assessment, maybe I just added unkind, but you know what I mean, was that they don't know what they're doing anymore. They've run out of ideas. We need, you know, but you've also heard counterpoints to that. And so here we are, the conversation continues, and it's about the ideology. I think if these were just a bunch of robbers terrorizing an environment, that's a straightforward matter for them to take out police and all of those, army, whatever. They can do their job. But the guy, I'm guessing, the Chief of Army Staff, was pointing to the fact that it's an intangible. As I think Christians say, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but
against principalities.
Against principalities and powers, you know, all that kind of a thing. That was what he was pointing to. Say, look, no matter how good the equipment is, as to use the words of Mazi, inviting the Holy Spirit in on the battle. But these are terminologies that we don't often use or hear used when talking about a fighting force.
More so with the military.
But that is exactly, and the ultimate fighting force is the country's army. And so it has drawn a comment, even harsh comment that if they knew what they were doing, they wouldn't be saying that. Because I think the insinuation is that all the armies around the world, go to the UK army, go to the American army, go to the German army. Do those ones have an army? Go all over the place. You will see men of faith bearing arms. But this one, you're headlining us. There are people who think, you're making us a laughing stock. But other people are saying, not necessarily so.
Yeah, I think to a greater extent it underlines the chief's level of concern as to the situation.
And maybe his spirituality as well.
Yes.
You know, when you look at it, because I don't know the last time you heard a Chief of Army Staff call for spiritual warfare in addition to all the other tactics that they...
Well, maybe it's often been done only with us in the barracks, okay? Yeah. Never in the public glare or before pressmen and so on. But we've had commanders who would always emphasize that, gentlemen, as you fall back to your homes, please, Muslims, go there, pray for this country. Christians, go there, pray for this country. They really talk to, some of them are pastors. I hope you know that.
Yeah.
We have officers who are pastors too, and so on.
And before soldiers go off on special missions,
yes,
I'm sure there might be prayers too.
Yes, of course. I just said that not too long when we started the program. And way back there in the barracks, like I said, while we were even growing as younger officers, we had senior officers who would tell you not to abandon your God. And when, as a junior officer, you are living some reckless life, you see them trying to knock you into order and remind you of certain commitments and so on. You know, it's okay with us.
Okay.
But maybe he's saying it for the first time in the public and the press is hearing it. And, oh, for God's sake. In our barracks, we have churches and mosques. And some of us are really quite religious, but you know where the boundary is.
But in all those times when soldiers, young soldiers are at the NDA and other kind of training, people are saying they don't know if spiritual warfare is a component part of their training, their courses, whether spiritual warfare will come up.
The spiritual angle of your life as a soldier is never done away with in the course of your training. It's incorporated in your training. Of course, in NDA, there are churches, and you go to service.
Of course.
You go to service. Allowance is given for your church service, which you go, come back, is there on the program.
But there's no,
and so on.
But there's no course on spiritual warfare. It's like you take that as part of your background. Before you become a soldier,
there are certain things that are given.
Oh, okay.
And that are left to the personal level.
Okay.
okay,
Yes.
that are left to the personal level.
Okay.
It's only that as commanders, they may emphasize the fact that do not forget to pray to your God. We are pulling out for these operations, gentlemen. Bring in your God, and so on. We are going as a whole, we must come back complete. And things like that.
Which is not the same as full-blown spiritual warfare, which you and I know is not a joke at all.
I said that is left to the personal level.
Okay. Ahmed Giwa in the UK. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning, Uncle Yori.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for calling in.
To the corner. You know what?
Yeah.
I believe that we have churches in Nigeria. We have all these spiritual leaders. They should be actually contribute to this prayer. You know, when it comes to army saying to us that we have to engage in spiritual affair, we have a problem. So we expect, because I'll give you an example. When I was in the U.S., when the Osama bin Laden situation happened, America bombarded Osama bin Laden. They didn't say they called for spiritual warfare when they leveled the house in ground zero. But we need to change the dynamics of our military. The man is tired. Please put some people who can do the work. Let all our churches, our mosques, let them pray. You can't face these guys by saying you are praying every day. They will kill everybody.
Ahmed, the impression I got was that the man is not changing, the Chief of Army Staff is not changing any of the professional operational strategy of the army, but he seems to be reminding that religions should get in on the act too and interface with this spiritual warfare without prejudice to all the other things we're doing. He's saying that the religions should not just say that our boys are out there on the field. It's not enough.
Yes, I agree with you, but let us go to our spiritual leaders. We have spiritual leaders in Nigeria. We have churches.
Division of labor, right?
Let them continue.
Okay.
Yeah, let them continue praying for us. Let them continue praying for Nigeria.
And then the soldiers keep on fighting.
I'm not there to be saying, yes, spiritual warfare. Spiritual warfare where? You have to fight and fight. If that happened during the Civil War, when we are doing territorial ideology, do we go to church and start praying? Go one send army into that area and we defeated them. So tell me now, when the Chief of Army Staff is saying go on spiritual warfare, that means he's tired. We need somebody who can be actively involved, strategically involved, so that he can fight the cause. Ideology, you can fight them. I don't see any reason why not. Let us our churches and let them continue to pray. So the corner, let them relax. Put somebody with ideas there. Let them provide the issue. Thank you, Uncle Yori.
Ahmed in the UK, thank you very much. You were a bit harsh, but again, we want to hear all sorts of opinions. And as I was trying to say that, look, put it in context. The Chief of Army's Staff, the word true is involved, meaning that on top of everything you expected us to be, we are that. Now, you need to add this too, although he did confuse a bit when he now says, I'm talking about myself, he did confuse a bit when he now said it's an unwinnable battle without what he was saying, the spiritual warfare aspect. And that's where a lot of Nigerians would now be confused. We'd like to believe of the invincibility of our army, at least in terms of ordinary civilians.
Yori, it's good that, look, we really bring out certain things by way of re-strategizing that is ongoing within the military, which, of course, like the Chief of Army Staff said, bringing in the spiritual angle will complement these lines of actions. They're out there in the field. The Army has decided to go into this concept of super camps, which is now being put into test, and let's see what level of improvement it brings to bear on the entire operations. Troops' welfare is being readdressed again. A lot of things are ongoing to rejig the entire system and, ensure that there's a great level of commitment to the battle itself and so on.
And further professionalize.
Yes, of course. A lot is ongoing. And it is within this context of all he's doing that he's saying that we should also turn to God to help complement our effort.
The only problem is that we've always been there. We've always been where he's saying we should come to now, is why people are now going as far as saying that, I wish our guy is not tired. Because we've always been there. Good morning, Yakub.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for holding on.
And good morning to Colonel.
Good morning, please. Thank you.
To me, I think some people take chief of army staff out of context.
How?
Fine. Figure, I want to know, because with due respect to the last caller, that say because chief of army staff says that we need a spiritual prayer, and then to him,
no. Spiritual warfare.
Fine.
The terminology is important.
No matter
that we need to include spiritual warfare in the arsenal against insurgents.
Whatever it is. The man, I don't think he's tired. Why I say so is this. Are you telling me that some people in this country, even you and me and the colonel in the studio, that does not pray for a day? You are going to a warfare. You are going to warfare that fighting somebody that believes that if I die, I'm going to the paradise. And then you are going to warfare to fight somebody that has ideology whereby if I kill one or two people, God is going to reward me. And then the man is not telling us that we need a prayer. And then even though we change the chief of army staff today, the person that you are going to put in to take on from where he stopped, can that person come out that telling Nigerian citizens, all army are said to this, I don't need any prayer. If they are not say so, if there is, God Almighty Allah answer prayer. The reason is this: we are just fighting this war since almost how many years ago.
Okay.
Up to now, we have never ended the war.
Sure.
So we need to talk to God Almighty Allah to help us to ending this war.
Sure.
Do you understand?
So
we need the prayer. Every individual, including me and you, we should be praying for them to fight this war and then won the war. Thank you, God bless you.
Indeed, thank you very much. I just, if I may, comment very, very briefly that it's not about prayer. We've already established that the army has religious heads, whether it is Muslim, whether it is Christian. They have religious leaders in there. So we've always prayed. I'm sure you know, Yakub, that spiritual warfare is, if you want, a separate branch. You don't often encounter it. If you're lucky, you don't need spiritual warfare. But, you know, people don't do spiritual warfare routinely, maybe unless that's how you are. You will pray. So that one is not in contention. But the fact that in fact, it's like the army itself will have its own elite branches. If you could consider spiritual warfare as one of the quote-unquote elite aspects, you know, I don't know how better to express it, but I'm trying to make it as a specialized area of religion. So when the chief of army staff is now calling for this specialized, which is not a joke, it's quite elaborate, and it's not something you say in passing. It's not. It's involved. That's why it wasn't prayer, Yakub. There's nothing against prayer, but it's the spiritual aspect, a spiritual warfare aspect. I beg your pardon. You got to use the two words: spiritual warfare. For people around the world and all Christians to get indeed what you are saying. It's not about we need to pray. That's not what he said. We already pray. But he says we now have to add spiritual warfare. So we know what spiritual warfare departments are in churches. We know there are, what are they called?
Prayer warriors?
Prayer warriors, deliverance pastors.
Okay.
You will find deliverance pastors in that branch more than in any other branch. And I imagine Islam also has its own version. So it was the chief of army staff calling on that elite aspect. I'm using the word elite, you know, just in the way army would use elite for specially trained forces. Yeah. That's what they are. And that's the one that's giving people concern. But some people have said, we understand perfectly, and the army is not out of step at all in this whole area. But then there are those who are not as generous and are thinking, Ahmed in the UK said spiritual warfare, how? And so it means that he doesn't put much stock on that. That let them do their work, which is, you don't think of soldiers as prayer warriors. That's not your initial thought about soldiers. They are specially trained fighting men. And you don't think of pastors as soldiers, except you're going to go along with Soldiers for Christ, example, and so on, that kind of a thing. So Ahmed was making the point, say, please, let the religion heads, let them continue to pray for us. Can our boys please face the army? Prayer is already, you've just explained it, that prayer is already deeply embedded in the army. But spiritual warfare, bringing out that gun, that cannon,
Yori, there is one other aspect that featured in all the...
Before you launch, I think Smart has also called in from Surulere. Is it Smart? Did I get that right? Smart from Surulere?
Yes, Smart from Surulere.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for calling in.
Morning, Mr. Yori. One of our greatest problems in this country is that we pander so much to religious sentimentality and stupidity. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Has anybody wondered the fate of the soldiers in the battlefield? If you hear gory tales from the battlefield, you will cry agonizingly. These guys are not equipped one bit. They lack totally everything. They sacrifice their lives. And the world is marks of sabotage. Even Buratai, his village is under siege. And we're here pandering to unnecessary sentimentalities. Yes, God is there. God will help us. But let them go in there, equip the boys, motivate the boys to do the job, and you see wonders. Let me tell you unequivocally, some people are reaping millions, billions from this war. And look at how our people boys are dying. Go to all the parents, you see widows everywhere. It's so heartrending. And we are here talking rubbish about religious sentimentality. In the name of God Almighty, the Boko Haram guys even call Allah Akbar. They believe in their own God. Then what are we talking about? So let the military wade into how to give welfare, motivate our men in the battlefield, and they will fight and deliver results. This colonel that is with you, I remember he was a very gallant man. I remember he was fighting, he was working at a cage or whatever. I remember that period, very gallant officer. He was prematurely retired. We need such people to go there. So tell him to stop talking about Buratai being right. If you take this guy there before you, to get other brilliant guys that were prematurely retired and move into that field, you see what will happen. So, Yori, you're doing a good job, but we're in trouble. Like these boys are dying.
Okay.
Go to graves everywhere. Go to windows everywhere.
Okay.
And somebody's there talking. The blood must haunt us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for calling in, Smart. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the admonition of the Chief of Army Staff to include spiritual warfare in the arsenal against insurgents. And not everybody is taking it the same way. And, well, Colonel Stan Labo, you don't need to comment on that in particular because what he was, I guess he was a naysayer. There are those who will say yay, there were those who will say nay, and he, for his own reasons, as he's saying, nay. I don't quite understand it. But it's okay. It's just that what we shouldn't miss out, however we feel about it, I think is the important thing that the Chief of Army Staff brought out, which is that we're fighting an ideology here. We're not just fighting a bunch of ruffians. It's an ideology, and he did make the point that might probably satisfy some of the critics that it's easy, and I think by implication he's saying that we are doing that. We are winning this war. But you take out all insurgents in the current operation, but maybe 5 of them, the danger exists that those 5 could come and repopulate the fold. Maybe if people are not used to that concept of the ways of terrorism and brainwashing and indoctrination and all of those kind of things, they might not put as much attention on it probably as the Chief of Army Staff would want us to. But I understand that Kevin, is it Kevin has come on the line? Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much for calling in, sir.
How are you, sir?
Very well, thank you.
So this topic is really very interesting.
Okay.
Because for the army to be calling for a spiritual welfare is the same thing we've been praying for in Nigeria. We've been praying for God to deliver Nigeria. With all the pastors, the imams, and everything going on in this country, the prayers are not working. The colonel said they have a place for church and mosques if you're going through the military. Do they have anywhere for Shango? They should.
What's the point you're making?
The point I'm making is spirituality doesn't play anything. We have imported gods that we are worshiping and we are calling, they are not doing anything for us. It's high time we're very practical with everything we're doing in this country. Corruption is the problem. It's not spiritual welfare. It's purely corruption. If they take out corruption, we will defeat Boko Haram. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for calling in, Kelvin. And you were making the point, Colonel, that there's a lot of money involved in things being upside down. You know, the way. Did you make the point? Well, okay. I'm sorry if you didn't, but it is known, or it is thought, that as we have this problem on the ground, there are a lot of people that are profiting from it.
Okay, it was one of the...
one of the viewers.
Viewers, yes, that made that comment. A lot of people have been enriched through what is ongoing.
Exactly.
Yes,
so the thing has many layers, because if they release any money now, the army is going to get, I don't know, depending on how much they release, the army will get at least 100 billion. You know, that's that kind of a thing. Maybe people are worried that, look, let too much of it not go towards marabouts and whatever other thing that they say is efficacious in terms of spiritual warfare.
No, I don't think so. That is not to say that I'm holding brief, that there isn't maybe some level of corruption ongoing and so on. Like we all know, corruption has permeated nearly every aspect of our society today and life. So if you want to defend corruption, no. You might not be able to within the Nigerian space. But I want us to understand that what really gulps, or why so much money is often required today into the defense and national security is because of the level of, do I say, neglect which this sector has suffered for quite a long period of time, especially under the military, when it was a deliberate line of action by government to starve some of these services of funding so that they don't get themselves equipped and probably become a threat to the government.
And in terms of neglect, the same kind of thing that happened to our electricity delivery sector.
Thank you, sir. So because of that now, today we are faced with a war. You don't equip an army while in war. You equip an army before war. That is to say, during peacetime, you are expected to
for war.
Take care of your inventory, against war. But when you are already in war, and it's now you want to run helter-skelter, you will pay from, because the guys you are buying from know you are desperate.
Well,
what they could have sold to you 2 kobo, they are ready to part with it 3.5 kobo. And they know you will still buy it.
Okay, then Colonel Hassan Stanlabo, retired security consultant, thank you very much for sharing your perspectives with us. And it was also interesting to hear the perspectives of people from home as well, and well, that's the way it is. Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I am Yori Folarin. Bye-bye for now.